Okay.
Okay, it's open.
Harry, if you could watch for when people stop filing in.
Yes, so far there's 2. 3.
Remember that?
Oh. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, my Lord, I am so tired.
We have 6 attendees so far.
Including us.
No, 10,
No, besides
10 total.
10 total. So how much longer do you want to give until people file in, Mayor?
I would give another 2 minutes.
Okay, 2 minutes. I'm keeping an eye on the clock.
Are you streaming yet, Harry?
I mean, it's open to everybody if that's what you're asking.
So the other 6 attendees can see now?
They should be able to see.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Okay. We've got about another minute and we'll start. And I mean, we can have people come in as we go.
Yes, I just wanted to make sure people were settling in, so to speak.
They're coming in. 7:04.
All right, then
We got 1 minute. Hold on. We got 1 minute. She said 2 minutes. I'm keeping her to that.
The keeper of the time.
All right, Mayor.
okay. Well, first of all, hello, everyone. I would like to welcome you to our policing community meeting with Chief Abrams. In some ways, doing this on Zoom makes it easier for folks to attend. And in other ways, regrettably, not all our residents are able to utilize electronic media to join these meetings. But these are the days that we're living in now. So we move on. Tonight's topic is cannabis and marijuana and the new laws that have passed the state legislature. And the legislation has passed, but there are still some interesting points and some maneuvering of what you can and cannot do specifically. And tonight, the chief will spend a good deal of time discussing the law and how it can impact you and how things will be handled from a police perspective as of this point. At this point, I'd like to turn the program over to Councilwoman Foster, who is the council's chair of public safety. Elsie?
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, everyone. But before we get started, let's pause for a moment of silence for those who were murdered in Atlanta, and also to say a word of prayer for our Asian community. Thank you. Tonight, as the mayor said, our topic, welcome to another police community forum. I'm hoping that tonight will be engaging and informative. We've switched the format up to talk about the most current issue that's facing us that we all have some concerns with, and especially as it pertains to what the police can and cannot do under this law. And there's areas that they will be able to address, and there's areas that they will not. But we want to start the conversation going with that. And then if you have any additional questions, we're open for that. With that said, I'm going to introduce our Chief Abrams, for him to share with us what he has learned, what he has put together, what both him and the captain have put together. And Chief, I turn the floor over to you at this time.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. As was stated, the plan in the beginning is to go over the new marijuana decriminalization and legalization and what can and can't happen under the new laws as they're written right now. You may or may not have heard that there's been some controversy over portions of the laws that may change. I'm going to just go over what is in effect right now and as it pertains to police and interaction with the public and what can and can't happen. I know it's a timely topic because it just came out. It's been in the works for quite some time. I know it was a big question during the election, and a lot of people were looking forward to the passing of this law, and now that it's out, it can be quite confusing. So I have a PowerPoint presented. The PowerPoint has a lot of words on it. I'm going to go through it speaking in a more easy to go tone, and at the end we can take questions on anything that you saw. The PowerPoint will be available later, so you can go back and refer to it if you have questions or anything of that nature. So let me see if I can share my screen. Okay, can you all see it?
Yes.
Okay. So the first thing I want to go over is what actually happened following the election and the passing of the referendum. So there's two things going on. There's legalization, which means that all the prohibitions have been removed. And then there's decriminalization, which means that things are still illegal, but there's no criminal aspect to them. It's an important distinction when you're looking at these laws as they're written right now. So these are the two laws that pertain to it right now. There's the legalization and the decriminalization, like we said. So basically, regulated cannabis has been legalized. However, in New Jersey, the infrastructure isn't there for the regulated cannabis. So while it is legal, there's no way to purchase the legal marijuana. So on the flip side of that, we have the decriminalization. If you have marijuana and you have an interaction with a police officer, you can't be arrested for it under certain conditions. And we'll get into the details as we go. So primarily, these are the laws that we deal with as police officers when it comes to interacting with someone with marijuana. This is traditionally what we would have charged someone with in the past. So this is no longer an offense. The possession of marijuana, just possessing of it, if you have 6 ounces or less, is not an offense under New Jersey law any longer, and you cannot be arrested. Distribution of marijuana, which in the past we would charge someone with the selling of marijuana, is no longer an offense. Same thing with hashish, and although it has a slightly different amount, 17 grams or less is not an offense. A distribution of 5 grams. And finally, being under the influence of marijuana is no longer an offense. We used to be able to arrest for that. Not telling an officer if you had marijuana or hashish on your person during arrest was a chargeable offense. Possession of drug paraphernalia is not an offense as long as it's drug paraphernalia for the use of marijuana or hashish. So something like a pipe, something of that nature. Needles, things like that. A pipe that might have residue from crack cocaine or something like that, or meth would still be charged under drug paraphernalia. And then finally, if you have possession of marijuana or hashish in the car while you're operating it, you can't be charged for the possession on a motor vehicle summons. You can still be charged for DUI if you're under the influence, but you cannot be charged for the simple possession of it, where before February you were able to. So regulated cannabis versus marijuana and hashish. Regulated cannabis, basically it's the same material. It's marijuana, it's weed, it's pot. The difference is the regulated cannabis is from an industry that's going to be set up in New Jersey, where it's cultivated and distributed by licensed dealers, versus marijuana or hashish, which is out there in the more traditional way that people bought in the past when it was illegal, through dealers and things of that nature. So regulated cannabis is going to be legal. Marijuana, hashish will be decriminalized. So there is no difference other than the legal cannabis is just regulated by the state, where the illegal marijuana is not. Bottom line, any marijuana that anyone has right now technically is illegal. That being said, you can't be arrested for it. However, it is the material itself, the marijuana, is subject to seizure. So an officer can confiscate marijuana that you possess currently because it is not regulated marijuana that the state has deemed was cultivated and sold properly through registered and licensed dealers. So these are some of the questions we've received over and over again since this law came into effect. Can an officer initiate or continue a pedestrian stop or go more into detail on a motor vehicle stop based on the odor of marijuana, the smell of marijuana? And the answer is no. The odor of marijuana, whether it's been smoked, already burnt, or raw, hasn't been smoked yet, by itself, does no longer constitute reasonable suspicion to justify or continue a pedestrian stop. Now, that doesn't mean that an officer doesn't have the ability to continue the stop for other reasons. It just means that the actual odor cannot play into the decision to go forward by the officer of an investigation. Can I be arrested for smoking marijuana? No, unless you possess more than 6 ounces. And for the first arrest, it's not an arrest, it's a warning, and then it goes from there. However, if you smoke marijuana or you take an edible or anything of that nature and you operate a motor vehicle, yes, you can still be arrested for DUI, for driving under the influence, if you are determined to be impaired while you're operating the car. Can a police officer seize my marijuana? Yes, they can. Marijuana is controlled dangerous substance currently. It can be seized even if there is no arrest. When the state figures out how they're going to do the regulated cannabis, then that will change, and there'll be 2 different standards, one for regulated cannabis, and it'll be marked similar to the way medical marijuana is now, something of that nature, some kind of system that way, versus unregulated. Where can I smoke marijuana? People, I get this one a lot. You can smoke it in private or anywhere that allows the smoking of tobacco products. So if you're not allowed to smoke a cigarette, you cannot smoke marijuana in that same location. Pay attention, though, that landlords and employers can still prohibit the smoking, vaping, or aerosolizing of marijuana on their property. So in that law is a provision for the owner of the property, if they own a rental property or a business, to say that marijuana is still not permitted on their premises. So while a landlord can't prohibit you from possessing the marijuana, they can prohibit you from actually smoking it on the property, even though you rent an apartment there, even though you live there and that's your primary residence. That gets confusing. Can I grow my own marijuana for medicinal purposes? No. In New Jersey, and I think this is the only state that has legalized marijuana, has that so far, that has this this caveat that no, only the state can give a license to someone to cultivate marijuana and then sell it. So you cannot grow it for yourself for medicinal or recreational purposes. Where can I buy it? Right now, you can't. New Jersey has not set up the infrastructure to create a system where the marijuana is grown, processed, and sold through dispensaries that are licensed. So that's not there yet. They're working on it. There is no ETA that we've been given, but eventually that's the plan, and you'll be able to buy it at regulated cannabis shops. There are no locations yet that have been given out or licenses given out preemptively. So when that happens, I'm sure you'll see advertisements and notifications in different towns that they're opening shops that can do that. But right now, they just don't exist. So there are special provisions for juveniles, and a juvenile for this purpose is under the age of 21. So they compare the possession and the taking of marijuana to the same as alcohol, underage alcohol use. So if a law enforcement officer encounters an individual under 21, they can seize the marijuana or the alcohol, and we can issue an appropriate warning only to a juvenile under 21. To somebody over 21, we would seize it. There'd be no warning. All the written warnings and seizures have to be documented, and we keep it in-house. It stays in here. There's no communication, to corrections or a therapist or anything like that goes anywhere. It stays here that we've contacted this person and we've given them a written warning. Some other things that have changed in the past, the laws that used to be under a juvenile under 21 with alcohol have been amended to match the new laws for the marijuana. So an officer may not request consent from anyone under the age of 21 to search them, to check their pockets, look in their backpack, check their car, anything like that. Just like with an adult, you cannot use the odor of marijuana as probable cause. Even in plain view, it does not give you the ability to search. In the past, if there was marijuana out on the car seat, you'd be able to search the car for more. You no longer do that for anyone, especially under 21. And officers cannot arrest, detain, or take an individual under the age of 21 into custody, except to get a name and an address to give them the written warning. It is very important that everyone knows this. When an officer encounters someone under the age of 21, that could be somebody 14, 15 years old, who has possession of or is under the influence of marijuana or alcohol for the first offense, we have to issue a written warning. We are prohibited from contacting the parents and telling them that their juvenile, 14, 15, 13, 18, is under the influence or did have possession of these items. The first time they come into contact with the police, it does not go to the parents. It stays with the child, the juvenile, and with the police. Now, that's the part of the new law that is most controversial, and that's the part that may change. But as it stands right now, an officer cannot do that. There is one exception, and that's for any kind of medical treatment that's needed. So the passing of these laws has not changed the community caretaking duties that law enforcement officers have. If we see someone who's intoxicated to the point where they can't take care of themselves, so they're a danger to themselves, they can't stay awake, they're having a hard time swallowing, they keep passing out, we need to get them help, and that's regardless of the substance that they're on. So even if someone is under the influence of marijuana, which is not illegal anymore, if they, just like alcohol is not illegal, if they are so intoxicated that they can't take care of themselves and there's no one there to help them take care of them, then we still have a duty to provide that aid. And that could be anywhere from just sitting with them until we can get family there or somebody responsible there, or making them go to the hospital for treatment. And this does affect juveniles. So where we could come into contact with a juvenile who is in possession of marijuana or alcohol, and we can't tell the parents, if they are under the influence of alcohol or marijuana to the point where they need to go to the hospital, we can contact the parents and tell them that they are under the influence. We can't give them the details. We can just say, hey, we had to bring your child to, or your child is going to, or we need you to come here because your child's intoxicated and needs medical treatment. But that's the extent of it. So we can't go into detail with the parents and tell them that they had marijuana on them or alcohol, regardless of the age, if they're under the age of 20. That is the quick and dirty, so to speak, of the current laws. I can stop sharing. There, am I back to normal?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so that is a quick rundown of the new laws as they stand right now. As they change, we'll be tracking the updates and amending our policies and doing what we need to do here. Now, keep in mind, this is all brand new. This is a completely new way of policing for us. A month ago, we could arrest somebody for one thing and now we can't. So there's, we're going through this cautiously. We're providing training for our officers. They're taking to it quickly. It's just a new shift in the paradigm, a new shift in their thought. And I don't foresee any issues, but it is complicated, and we're gonna get through this the best we can. If anyone has questions, feel free to contact us, to reach out to us in the police department. You can talk to the officers if you see them out about it. And, they've been trained, they know, they're aware. So that's where we stand with it. Is there any, Harry? Can you tell if there's any questions about what we just went over real quick before we get into questions?
Any raise
I will open it up to questions, and if you have a question, please raise your hand, and then I will unmute you. So I'm going to scan those that are attending right now and looking for. We're first entertaining questions on the topic of the PowerPoint, and there is one question, right, Chief, that came in advance as well.
It did, but it didn't cover the PowerPoint, so I'm going to wait and see if there's anybody who has questions about the new marijuana laws, and if there is none, then I will answer the question that came in from a resident via email ahead of time.
Okay.
I'll handle that if it's no. It looks like there's one under Q&A. I don't know how to get to that.
Hold on. I'm going to read it to you, Chief.
Okay, perfect.
Does the not telling parents apply to only the first warning to juveniles?
Yes. So the first warning to a juvenile, we can't tell the parent. Second notification, excuse me, the second time we have contact with an individual or juvenile, I'm sorry, a juvenile under the age of 21, we can then speak to the parents and let them know what happened. The third time we have to notify the state, and the fourth time we have to notify a resource center that can help with addiction issues for the family. We have to notify them. So there's 4 steps as you go through it. So that's
okay. I do not see any other questions in the question and answer.
If I could ask a question, can
Yeah.
you share if you have gotten any additional direction from the prosecutor's office regarding this?
Yeah, we're in constant contact with the state AG's office and the prosecutor's office. There is a assistant prosecutor over there who's in charge of handling any questions that the officers may have. We have to contact them with any, if it rises to the level of a charge, if there's over 6 ounces, things of that nature, we have to contact them to figure out how to proceed. When anything changes, the prosecutor's office sends us out guidance, frequently asked questions, a little cheat sheet card that the officers keep in their pocket that kind of helps them run through the checklists of first offense, second offense, third offense, what is seizable, what isn't, what is chargeable, what isn't, those things. So that's a constant communication back and forth as we go. So I see, Harry, there's 2 more questions.
I'm going to give you the 2 more questions. Question number 1, how often does Highland Park Police now arrest people for drug possession?
I think last year we had a total of 27 arrests for CDS. Everything from heroin, crack, cocaine, marijuana. I think we had 27 total last year. Some of those are, we made an arrest for an assault and then found out during processing that they might have had something on them, a CDS on them. So it wasn't a purely CDS arrest, but I think we had 27 total arrests with CDS last year.
Okay, there's one more question. Do places like Donaldson Park and Johnson Park count as places where someone can legally smoke marijuana?
I don't know if you can smoke tobacco products down there right now, unless the county changes anything. If you can smoke a tobacco product, then you can smoke marijuana. That's the rule of thumb as we have it right now. If the county comes out with guidance that says otherwise, they'll have to post signs. They'll have to do something of that nature to put it out there. But as it stands now, anywhere you can smoke a tobacco product, you can smoke marijuana.
That raises another question, Chief. Would it be the Highland Park Police or the county police that would have jurisdiction in the county parks?
Generally, for criminal matters, it would be the police department and the
Highland Park.
And Highland Park Police Department, and the rangers handle their ordinances like parking on the grass, things of that nature. So they would probably call us to come down if it was more than a warning that had to be given. I think the next question might be for you, Mayor. I see it here. I'll read it to you. Are there plans to open any marijuana lounges in Highland Park anytime soon?
So the governing body has not yet made a determination on the types of marijuana facilities we would be open to here. The way things are going to work, by August 22nd, a municipality has to opt in or opt out of having any type of marijuana facility in the municipality. If they opt out, then at any time they can put in a request to opt in. If they opt in, they have to wait 5 years before they can opt out again.
There are no Q&A. There's no questions on this. Okay.
Answer the question that came in, the one that came in before. I thought, yeah,
The
there was
earlier
another.
one?
I think we've caught up on all the questions. I think we've answered them all.
Okay, so now we can open it up for.
Well, no, I'm sorry. I have the one question that was submitted. It's about snow parking. So
Okay,
I think
yeah.
we're done with the marijuana topic. I'll go to the next. So I received an email, and the person wanted to know, during the snowstorms, numerous cars were parked on streets clearly marked no parking when snow covered. Why weren't these cars ticketed, if not towed, as it caused traffic issues and likely plowing issues for DPW? Also, it's missed revenue for the town. So I know the snowstorm was a mess. There was a lot of complaints, and a lot of people thought that it could have been better. As far as the police department is concerned, we have those snow street ordinances for a reason. That's to give the police the ability to ticket and tow if necessary, not just uniformly. The idea behind that is it's based on the ability for plows to move down the streets properly and for emergency vehicles to navigate our streets in a snowstorm. So those ordinances aren't just a carte blanche ticket to write and a summons to everyone who parks where they shouldn't. We do our best to contact people and ask them to move, because that's the best thing to do. We try, we prefer not to write summonses. We do if the car is parked on a crosswalk, if it's parked in a way that makes it dangerous for pedestrians, or if it's a way that the vehicles can't be, the emergency vehicles or plows can't get through. I think there was a total of 67 calls for snow-related issues. Some called in by residents, some called in by DPW as they were plowing. We did tow a total of 10 cars, and we wrote 29 parking tickets during that last snowstorm. So it does happen. The other side is, if we spent half an hour on one street ticketing every car that was parked properly, then we're not at the other streets we need to be finding information to get cars moved so that the plows can get through, so emergency vehicles can get through. As far as missing revenue, that's the last thing on the police department's mind when we write tickets. I don't think anybody wants to live in a world where police departments write tickets based on revenue for the municipality. We go out there, we write tickets for safety. It's the only way. Attaching a fine to the motor vehicle summons is the only way sometimes to get the message across with the ticket, and that's why that's there. It's not to generate revenue for the town. In any event, 80% of any money from any tickets we write doesn't go to Highland Park anyway. It goes to the state. The town actually sees very little revenue or money at all from any summonses written and fines put out by the court. Thank you for that question.
It looks like we have questions now that are general.
Okay.
So I'm going to answer them.
Okay. Well, ask them.
I'm sorry. Ask them.
You can answer them if you'd like.
I'd rather you answer them.
Okay.
Very first one: are there statistics, results that you can share now that have been provided by the statisticians that were hired by the Highland Park Police Department? If not, why not?
Okay. I think the second question, I'm looking at it here, it's the same. Where is Hppd in terms of the contract with Rutgers? So I'll answer them together if that's okay. So we started giving data to Rutgers. They are taking 2 snapshots of a month at a time, separated 6 months, and they're compiling that data, figuring out what we have that works and doesn't work, what they have to clean and not clean, to develop a process to do the full year. So that's the stage we're at right now. We have received nothing back from them yet as far as results. I think that's going to take a little bit of time. It's a lot of data to go through. It's a lot of information to sift through, let alone analyze, just to get it compiled and to get it crunched. So that's where we're at. We are in contact with Rutgers. The captain speaks to the person heading our project on a regular basis, going back and forth with information on how we get this done, how we get that done. But that's where we're at. So we give them updates weekly to our data, what we have, and they're taking that and they're They're crunching the numbers for the 2 separate months to see how to compare, how to contrast, and what data is useful and what data is not useful.
I think the other part of the question was that the data that was put together by the De-Escalation group, I think that they're requesting to have that information.
They are, but I don't think they're going to use we have different metrics now than we did then. So based on Dr. Davis's report, we changed the way we collected some of the data. So I don't think it's apples to apples anymore because we have a different criteria. We have the officers record now based on Dr. Davis's recommendations. So we altered that. So I know they looked at it. We've sent them that other report already. I don't know how much. Maybe they will. I'm curious how much they'll do a compare and contrast between Dr. Davis's data and the new data, or if they're just going to look at our data now as a benchmark. We can do that comparison, and then driving forward, we can measure how things change going forward. So when we hired Rutgers, it wasn't to do anything historical. It was to do, since we started collecting the data the right way, when the captain and I took over about 1.5 years ago, and moving forward. So we can track going forward, we can watch our officers, we can watch what we're doing, and then from there, we can maybe take that information and that methodology and spread it out from traffic stops to other police actions.
You have questions, or would you like me to read them to you?
Sure.
Okay. Is Rutgers supporting the Highland Park Police Department to take over the analysis, or will this be a yearly cost for the borough?
So it's in 3 phases. We've only contracted for the first phase, and that's just the analysis of the data. Phases 2 and 3 are to come up with a methodology that the Highland Park Police Department can use to do this going forward on our own, and to train officers in that methodology, and then to teach our officers how to analyze the data and get meaningful answers from that information. So after, we don't just get numbers, we get numbers that actually tell us something, and then we can take that information and devise a plan to move forward, to change what we need to change, to enhance what we need to enhance, or just to continue doing what we're doing already. So that's phases 2 and 3, but we got to get through phase 1 first and go from there.
Ready for the next one?
Yep.
Can you prepare material that describes what data is being collected now?
Yeah, I can tell you the data that we're giving them now is only motor vehicle stop data. So it's when we stop a motor vehicle, we look at the time and the date, of course, the location in town where it was, the race and ethnicity and the gender of the driver, the type of car it is, and how long the officer's on that car stop for. So the duration of the car stop. Is it a 5-minute interaction? Is it a 20-minute interaction? Things like that. So that's the data that we are giving Rutgers right now. After they analyze it, they might say, well, you should collect this and you should collect that. When we started collecting this data before I was hired here even, it was based on the consent decree for the state police that they had to do, but other agencies don't currently do it. It's not a mandate from the state that we collect this data. It's just something that this department has done historically. But for the first time, we're actually not just collecting it, we're collecting it, and now we're going to do something with it. We're going to look at it and try to figure out what this actually means. My first 10 years as a patrolman on the road, I filled these sheets out every day. I stopped 5 cars, and there was this, that, and the other thing, and I turned them into my sergeant, who turned them into the lieutenant, who turned them into whomever, and they went in a box, and that was it. They were never analyzed. They were never looked at for patterns or ways to do things better, or that we're doing things poorly. They were never looked at. So now we're actually going to take this information that we've been collecting and do something with it, which I think is the whole point of doing it in the first place.
Okay. Thank you. We have another question, Chief. There's been a serious increase in gun permits in New Jersey, and I assume in Highland Park. What kind of training and education are these new gun owners receiving? Is the community being informed about the implications of this situation? For example, if a child is going over someone else's house, does the parent know to ask if there is a gun and how it is stored?
Yes, there's been a dramatic increase in gun permits in the country and in Highland Park. In 2019, we had a total of 64 permits. In 2020, we had 204 permits. So it's a pretty significant increase. This year so far, we're at 32 or 36 permits, I think, so far, and we're in mid-March. As to the training, the training that the gun owner, firearm purchaser seeks out is the training that they're getting. The police department does not provide training to citizens or residents or any gun owner on the handling or storage of a firearm. There are laws that say, that they have to be when a person purchases a firearm, the store that sells the firearm has to notify them of the different laws in New Jersey that hold them accountable and responsible for the safety of that firearm, but it doesn't go any further than that. As to if parents know whether or not to ask, that's up to an individual parent to take that responsibility if that's something that they're worried about, to make sure that the houses that their children go to and play at, if they do or do not have firearms, if they're held safely, and most importantly, to teach their kids what to do in the event that they do see a firearm that's left unattended in someone's house. The parents need to teach their kids, the rules are you don't touch it and you immediately tell a grown-up. But that's up to the parents to work with their kids and to make sure that they're safe, that they know what to do when they come across a situation like that.
Chief, is it possible, given the increase in the number of guns being licensed here, that we could put some guidelines together to share with parents?
We could do that. We can do anything that's voluntary on the part of the gun owner. What we can't do is add extra steps to the permitting process. We can't make them take training or make them go to a class before they get their permit, but we can do things that are voluntary that people can sign up for. If we ask people when they come in for their things, if they need a gun lock or some kind of safety device, and we provide them to anybody who asks, who says yes, we offer them to every person who comes in. But that's the extent that we do right now. But we can do voluntary, gun safety type thing. We could do that.
I think that would be a true help to the community.
Okay.
Also, there are some PSAs that we can upload to the PD and to our borough website. There are some free PSAs about gun safety that we can always, they're available on YouTube and other places, so we can have links so people can click on these links and learn more.
Right. Yeah, there's lots of programs out there from national groups like the NRA have programs, and there's local instructors in New Jersey that have programs like that. You can find a lot of decent information on YouTube, but you got to be careful. You can find a lot of really unsafe information on YouTube as well. I'm
talking about the ones that are coming out from official government entities.
Yeah. Yes. Yep. Yeah.
Not those that where people are making up. I'm talking about from official governmental websites.
Yep.
About firearm and rules.
Yes.
And have you.
I think that all of that would be very helpful for our community.
Okay.
Okay. Chief, I have 3 more questions for you.
Yep.
Okay. Do the traffic stop data now include the following information? Reason for stop, outcome of stop, no action, warning, summons, use of force, etc.
Yes. So at the conclusion of the traffic stop, the officer also indicates in our CAD system if a warning was issued, if a summons was issued. The officer has to state the reason for the stop before they contact the driver. So when the officer calls a stop out over the radio, they say what the reason for the stop was. At the end, when they clear, they'll say they give them a summons for they might have been stopped for rolling through a stop sign, but in the end, they were giving a seatbelt violation ticket. So the reason for the stop and the actual summons given for a different violation might be different, but they have to give out both sets of that information. Use of force is tracked on its own, but if it ties back to a motor vehicle stop, then that's included in there, yes. We have had no uses of force resulting from a motor vehicle stop for the last 4 years, maybe 5 years. But I know for sure the last 4 years, we've had no motor vehicle stops that ended in arrest that needed use of force.
I'm going to read you the next one, Chief.
Yes, please.
Does the data collected include whether an arrest has been made as a result of a traffic stop and why? Does the data include whether use of force was needed and why?
All right. So like I said, if there's an arrest attached to the motor vehicle stop. That's included in there. It would include the use of force report that it was generated via traffic stop, but we haven't had that in years. So we haven't had any use of force due to traffic motor vehicle stops. So if it was necessary, it would be in there, but it hasn't been necessary.
Okay, it looks like I have one more question.
Okay.
How many crimes have been committed or attempted with guns in Highland Park, legally registered or unregistered?
I can't think of any this year. Well, since I've been chief, I can't think of any crimes that have been committed with any weapons in Highland Park, whether it's a knife, a bat, a gun, anything. I'm trying to think. I don't have that handy. I can look that up and post an answer somehow. I don't have a name. It's an anonymous attendee. I'd have to look in the CAD and to verify that, but I can't make any recollections for anything like that. The only thing even close to that is I think once starter pistol or maybe a BB gun 6 years ago, maybe. But there's been nothing like that. No firearms used in anything like that.
Okay. Chief, we have one more question. Is the Highland Park Police Department collecting data now on de-escalation techniques used during incidents that align with prior training?
So we don't track specific techniques that are taught. The officers go to different trainings. They learn different techniques. We track use of force incidents. We track body cam footage for different kinds of calls that we watch, but we aren't actually keeping track of what style of de-escalation was used or things of that nature. It's a really hard thing to quantify. It's a really hard thing to measure. A lot of de-escalation is body language and talking. So it's difficult sometimes to track that down. So we send everybody to training. We keep them up to date on our policies and procedures. We review every single use of force call, body camera footage, car camera footage, reports, the whole thing now. That wasn't something we did before. But we don't track the actual methods used for de-escalation.
But some of the training that the officers go to, is it for de-escalation techniques?
Yes, yeah, and the officers are using them. I've seen body cam footage for a number of calls where the officer has used excellent de-escalation techniques and taken a person that we have actually had to use force on in the past, which, in the exact same situation again, and was able to talk them into being calm and letting the officers approach them and assist them and get them the help that they needed. It's pretty amazing, some of the stuff that these guys and girls that patrol the streets can do just with their body language and the things that they say to some of the residents that are in crisis that really need help. It's something else to watch, but they've gotten very good at it.
I have a follow-up question, Chief. It's not clear to me from your answer whether both the reason for a traffic stop and the infraction for which a warning or ticket has been issued is included in the data recorded. It would be better if you could put a list of data recorded from traffic stops in writing and put that list in an easy to find spot on the Borough website.
So yes, the reason for the traffic stop, and yes, the infraction, and yes, a warning was given or not. And if a ticket was given, the reason what the ticket is issued is all included in the data recorded. And that's the part of the packet of information that is going to Rutgers to analyze along with everything else. I don't know about us putting a running list of every motor vehicle stop in the public with that kind of information on it or not. But that information is recorded, and it is part of the information packet that goes to Rutgers for analysis.
Okay, we've got one more question. Is there a way to report on the video analysis done on body cams that speak to outcomes of de-escalation training if this isn't possible with adding data to incident reports?
Trying to figure out what the, is there a way to report? Don't delete that one yet, Harry?
It's not deleted. It's always in the answered
Okay.
section.
Got it.
So I think if I can represent and it's an anonymous attendee, they're asking, can there be video analysis on body cams that looks at de-escalation?
That's interesting. Like, there's only certain body cam footage that's tagged or flagged for us to review. Use of force for sure, pursuits, things of that nature. That's interesting. I hadn't thought of that.
Well, maybe that's something that in your next chief meeting or
Yeah,
press.
that's something I'm gonna look into. I mean, the video analysis done it's kind of subjective. There's no standard to measure it against. It's, we watch the video and we think the officer did a good job or a poor job based on our training in de-escalation and what we've learned is from the supervisory level of supervising officers with that kind of stuff. It is subjective, which makes it difficult. I mean, our sergeants do reviews of body cam footage on a regular basis. They're tasked to review a certain percentage of all their officers' calls to find out what's going on, but we've never tried to codify the de-escalation technique used and how successful it was or was not. That's interesting.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
That's interesting. Thank you for that question.
I have one more follow-up question, or maybe a follow-up to a follow-up. I'm not interested in the data values for each traffic stop. I'm asking if the categories of data that is recorded that you have mentioned during this forum could be written down rather than just stating them verbally.
Yes, I can do that. We'll put it up on the Borough website, the Highland Park Police section under the hpborough.com website. Give us a week and we'll write out a list of all of the data points that are collected on a traffic stop and go to Rutgers for analysis. I can do that. So sorry for misunderstanding your question. I thought you wanted something else.
Okay, we have another question that just came in. I think it would be important in terms of measuring the impact of training on officer behavior to say what training is more or less effective. Could be done with a sample of videos so as not to overwhelm with all of the video collected.
Right, so that's something we struggle with on a regular basis. The training we send an officer to, it's expensive. It's time away from work that we need to cover with another officer. Is it worth it? And we've been struggling, to see what is and isn't worth it. What's the value added from this particular training? We started trying to solve this problem by making the officers complete an evaluation for every class they go to. For every class they go, they have to complete a training evaluation form and submit it to the captain. Then we get to look at to see if we're getting, quote unquote, our money's worth out of this training, if it's effective or not. We speak to officers following incidents where they use de-escalation. Sometimes, after watching the body cam footage, sometimes just you see them in the hallway and you say, "Hey, good job on that call the other night," or, I heard you had a tough call the other night. How did it go? And hearing them talk back, "Oh yeah, I remember what they taught me in class, and I remember this, and I remember that," and we can go back and look at what classes they attended, and see what works and what doesn't work. But that's the hardest part of this. We send to training that, by all accounts, is good, by all reports is good, and we hope that the officers can take away from it what they need to execute these techniques on the street successfully. And so far, knock on wood, we've had great success with our officers in a lot of de-escalation things. We get emails and messages from people that we've interacted with of how well the officers did with their husband, their wife, their sons, their daughters, brothers and sisters. He was out of control and breaking things, and the officer calmed him down. Or, in the past we would have to fight with them, but the officer was able to come and talk to them. So we get those kind of things too, which are useful and helpful. And we try to track those things, but it's a real struggle because it is so subjective. And, a technique A might work on person A, but it might not work on person B. So the technique that was successful in the past might not be successful in the future. So it's really hard to quantify those. And like I said, it is so subjective. I might watch a body cam footage and think, wow, that was tremendous. And somebody else might watch that body camera footage and say, oh, no, there's lots of problems there. They should have done this better, that better. Do we measure just by the outcome? If the officer was successful and de-escalating to the point where no force is used, or a fail where it started to work and then it didn't for whatever reason, it's a hard back and forth with that kind of thing. And this is all new too. I mean, we have a year and a half's worth of data on this. This is something we just started in 2019. It's hard to determine how well something is or isn't working with so few instances of its use. It's not like we're doing this every single day. It's an occasional thing. Thank goodness. We don't want to have to use these techniques. It means somebody's really in crisis. But we only have a handful of incidences where these things have been used and they've worked. So it's hard to even so that it's statistically such a small sample of times when this is used. But so far, we're happy with the training that our officers have. And some of the officers that are brand new, we've hired 9 officers, I think, since 2019, since I took over as chief. Not every officer's gone to every training yet because, we did the training early in 2020, but then the new officer was hired late in 2020, so they haven't been through it yet. So there's, keeping track of that kind of things too. It's a constant review of best practices, a constant review of calls and things of that nature to make sure it worked. The most helpful thing has been the body cam reviews, watching 10% of every officer's body cams by their supervisors to see how they handle calls. Are they talking to people nicely? Are they handling their calls the right way? Are they giving good advice when it's necessary? That kind of stuff. Are they de-escalating when they need to? Are they making things worse? It's all part of it. So
if you'll permit me, Chief.
Yes.
It's 7:53 now. This event is advertised to go until 8. There are 2 more questions in the Q&A queue. Mayor, if we want to close it with these 2 questions, do we want to invite any last questions?
Well, we should handle the last 2 questions that's in the queue.
Yeah, and frankly, if one more question comes up, if we go 15 minutes beyond the end date, we're okay.
Okay.
In time.
All right, so we have 2 now, and I'll track for 1 or 2. All right. Question came in. An officer came to our house for a welfare check on someone who does not live in my house and who we've never heard of. How do you follow up on welfare checks such as this one? It concerned us that someone might need help, but was not findable.
That happens, and sometimes we aren't able to find the person that we're looking for. If that's the only address we have. Generally, if something like that happens, the Detective Bureau becomes involved, and they'll use resources that they have. They can use different services and programs that might look up credit histories and where the recent credit card was used, or recent addresses, income tax returns, things like that, to help us locate the individual or possibly even family. A lot of times when something like that comes in, we'll go back to the original caller, the person who requested the welfare check, and say, okay, well, they don't live there anymore. Can you give us more? Do you know family members? Do you know another address? Do you know their job? Things like that, and reach out. Sometimes we reach dead ends and we can't find people. That unfortunately does happen. But a lot of times with some out of the box thinking and a little bit of luck, we are able to track down these people and find out. A lot of times the people that we don't find, it's purposeful. They don't want to be found. They left their family, they left whatever, and they are doing their own thing, and they're quite happy and healthy, and we'll hear from them down the road. But no, that does happen where we can't find them. Oftentimes we do, but it does happen where we can't. But we do track down every way we can. The Detective Bureau does run down what they can to make sure we've exhausted every avenue before we stop looking for them.
Okay, we've got 1 more question in the queue. Does the police department track incidents of use of de-escalation technique? If so, could one analyze the number of times a particular officer with a particular type of training was involved? If the sample for the Highland Park Police Department is small, could the same be done for data aggregating, say, Highland Park and Piscataway or Edison?
So we don't track individual de-escalation techniques and the way they're used. A lot of times, I mean, some of the things that count as de-escalation, it could be something an officer just did in passing. You know, they're on a motor vehicle stop and the driver's irate, and you know, they just spent 2 minutes to talking to the person and calm them down. I mean, that's de-escalation, but it doesn't even cross the officer's mind to record it as a de-escalation technique. It's a conversation. It's talking to a driver. So we don't record those. We do record uses of force, and we can record times when de-escalation failed. I mean, that's something that gets tracked with the use of force reports. If we have to use force, obviously de-escalation didn't work, and we try to look at why it didn't work. You know, sometimes the officer doesn't even have a chance to try de-escalation. It's, you know, as soon as the officer knocks on the door, you know, force is necessary to protect the officer. You know, the person comes out, quote unquote, swinging. So we do track or follow all the use of force reports, and that would show us a failure, but not successes. As far as comparing our small data sample to other larger towns, I don't know how we could do that, if it would be a fair comparison based on training, if it, you know, the officers attended the same trainings or not, and then different policies, procedures, rules, and regs that Highland Park officers follow that you know, Edison or New Brunswick or Piscataway might not follow. Also, population types might change things as well. I don't know if that'd be a fair comparison.
We have no more questions. Mayor?
Okay. Chief, do you want to wrap up with anything, or Elsie before I?
Yeah, we're always here 24/7. Our building is still closed. If you need to talk to somebody, you can come make an appointment. You can come to the front door and hit the buzzer and talk to the dispatcher. And, you know, we'd be more than happy to talk to you. The officers love to stop and talk to people. If you see them, say hi, talk to them, ask them questions, engage, please. We're here for the community. We're here for Highland Park. You know, all the men and women that work here in the police department are excellent and excited that they work for Highland Park. So say hi, talk to them. They're great people. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to post the PowerPoint on the Borough website. I will post that other stuff, the data sets that are being recorded. We'll find a way to post that on there as well. And we're always here. If you have a question, reach out and call. All our contact information is on the Borough website.
And Chief, don't forget to look into some gun safety.
Yeah, we'll start looking at that too. Yes.
Okay, great. And Elsie?
I just want to thank everybody for participating, and thanks for the useful information. But in addition to, just a reminder that our Junior Cadet Academy is coming up. If you're interested, please take the opportunity to fill the form out, because these spots go by pretty quickly. And with COVID and people getting their paychecks and all that stuff that's going around, there's so many scams, and we have started to put out information on the different scams that are floating out there, so people can be aware and they can be kept safe. With that said, I want to thank you all again for coming out, and our next forum will be in 3 months from now. Our next, I don't remember the date of
June 17th.
June 17th.
June 17th is the next one.
So look out for our next forum, and hopefully we'll get a bunch of questions that we would be more than happy. And as the chief says, the PD is always available.
Oh, one last thing, Operation Take Back, which is where the police department collects unused and unwanted medication. It's going to be Saturday and Sunday, April 24th and April 25th from 10 to 2 at the community center. So if you have any medications that you want to get rid of, you can meet the officer down there, and we'll collect them and have them destroyed.
I want to thank Councilwoman Foster for her work with the police department and other public safety areas in town. And thank you, Chief, for really taking hold of this department and making significant changes for the better. And
Thank you.
Harry, thank you for coordinating all this.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
everyone. Take care.
Everyone.
Stay healthy.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Closing the meeting for everybody. Bye-bye.